All right, we're getting right into it. This is the Ohio 70.3 race recap. Hey, good morning. Happy Tuesday morning. It's July 21. We are 2 days post Ohio 70.3. So have a little car ride today. So, of course, the nature of this podcast is that if we have a car ride, we do a car cast. So here we are. We're going to debrief Ohio 70.3 from primarily my own perspective, but I will shed some light on how things went for the race as a whole from other athletes' perspectives, and just the day, how the day went, how the trip went, all that stuff. But yesterday, Monday, was a travel day, so I didn't really have the ability to fully put this race recap out. And at the same time, I wanted to give myself a moment to kind of reflect on how the race went for myself, which of course I love to share that with you all. And if you can gather any insight or nugget to help your own coaching or help your own training, that's what we're doing here. So I'm happy to dive into all that, but first just want to thank you for being here. I had a handful of people come up and just voice their appreciation for some of the insights that you're getting through this podcast, through the channel. So that's why we do it, and I just want to thank you for listening, following along, supporting, all that stuff. Honestly, it's just been great. So just as a reminder, you can grab this podcast and any of the other 110 plus. I think this is 116 now, so the other 115 episodes, wherever you get your podcasts. So Spotify, Podbean, Google, Apple, wherever you stream your stuff, YouTube. Check out all of the other podcasts. It's been quite a while now, so I'll caution you, if you go the whole way back to one, you'll hear me and Coach Mitch, and we've come a long way. We'll say that in terms of how we've adapted to the podcast life. But if you want some entertainment, go the whole way back. Listen up. You have 115 other episodes, and again, we appreciate the support and the listening, the views, all that stuff. So thank you. If you want to reach out to me, hillpursuit@gmail.com. If anything you're hearing today or in recent episodes sparks a question or a conversation, I welcome that, and I love that. So please do not hesitate. Always reach out. I like when that happens. I don't mention that enough on here, but it does happen. And, if it's a quick conversation or question, sometimes it just kind of breezes over. But I would welcome the opportunity to discuss some of that in real time on a show. So if you want to check out the website, hillpursuit.com, coaching, nutrition, anything you need there, just check it out. Okay. Lastly, I guess I missed the social stuff. So if you follow along, it's just all at Hill Pursuit, all the socials. We have a LinkedIn as well, but YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, all that stuff. Check it all out. All right. So let's dive into Ohio 70.3 race recap. I guess there's nowhere else to start but the smoke, the air quality. So my race preview episode was Tuesday of race week. That was a sip of coffee, for the record, not an Alani. We're not sponsored in this episode by Alani. But the coffee is hitting quite right. So Tuesday of race week, there was no smoke. The wildfires from Canada had not led to any smoke, any disruption of air quality whatsoever on Tuesday. If I had waited 2 days, I probably would have predicted that the race would be canceled. So Thursday and Friday, the air quality in Sandusky. Now, I drove out on Friday, but the air quality was so bad, it was hard to see like a half mile in front of your face when you're looking out at the water. and we have a lake house right on the water. So I pulled up, me and my wife are leaving our home in Western PA, questioning if this is even going to happen and assuming that it will not happen. That's how bad it was at our house in Western PA. We're looking at Sandusky and it's not as bad. So we're like, all right, let's go out. If they cancel it, we're going to turn around, we'll hang out indoors, and we'll come back home. We get out to Sandusky and it's much worse. Could hardly see, like I said, a half mile in front of our faces when we're standing on the edge of the water looking out. The IRONMAN village on Friday had moved everything indoors. So the village itself, the athlete check-in, nothing was outside on Friday because the air quality got so bad. I guess depending on the app that you're using, the air quality number or the metric could have ranged from anywhere between 5 and 800 in terms of negative air quality score range. I don't know I don't know the syntax behind the equation, but it was very bad. Like typical air quality, I believe, is like 30 to 40, period, like 30 to 40.0. But air quality in Sandusky was over 500.0, according to the metric or the app that I was using, and others had reported upwards of 800 points or arbitrary units, whatever. It did not look good, okay? Everything looked as though the entire race would be canceled. The water was relatively smooth when we got out there on Friday. Saturday was a little bit different. We had some storms that came in overnight. Friday night, not bad, but just enough that people were holding on to the possibility of a wetsuit legal race option. Was never going to happen. The water temp on Friday was 80.9. On Saturday at check-in, when I checked in, it was 80.7 because the storms brought it down a little bit overnight. Listen, there was never a possibility of this water going up to 83.9 or down to 76.1. It just was not possible. So we were committed to a wetsuit optional race the entire week. Like that's what it looked like. And if you're someone who lives in the Facebook group, you probably saw any and everything in between in terms of the paranoia of having the wetsuit, not having the wetsuit, being allowed, having it be illegal, all that stuff. It was a wetsuit optional race for like the last 2 weeks. The weather was not going to change enough to deviate the temperature by 4 degrees in either direction. So thankfully, at least I knew in my head that I knew what to expect in terms of the water temp. Anyways, Saturday, thankfully, right? So the air quality was awful on Friday. Thought the race might get canceled. Looking at the IRONMAN app, seeing things are moved indoors. I made the commitment to check in on Saturday. That's kind of what I've come to get comfortable with, to be honest, is fewer trips to the village, unless it's a first time race and you want to go get stuff and get gear at the village. You don't have to go there on Friday for a Sunday race, so you have to check your bike on Saturday anyways. So I was just kind of committing to the Saturday athlete check-in as well as bike check-in all in one shot. That's just the easiest, simplest way for me to do things, especially having 4 kids. So Saturday, everything's fine. Air quality is back to normal, literally normal. It's under 100, approaching 80, downwards of 50, etc. It's almost like the smoke wasn't even there. I can't make that up. So I wake up Saturday morning, everything is completely fine, and I'm shocked. Thought the race might get canceled. All of a sudden, we're back to square one. Looks like nothing ever happened. What wildfires, right? So everything goes on as usual. Athlete village, outside, check-in outside. Of course, bike check is, thankfully they were able to do that normally within normal hours and plans. So knocked out the athlete check, knocked out the bike check. And at some point Saturday, I believe it was probably like dinner-ish, another storm came through. We didn't get much where I was at in terms of my lake house, which was only about 15 miles away, 15 minutes away, 20 minutes away from transition. but transition got hit a little bit. So there was some heavy winds that came through on Saturday night, again, post-dinner-ish. And it looked as though the lake would have between 3 and 5 foot swells and waves. So I asked some family, because again, my family has a house out there and they boat out there all the time. They're very familiar with how the winds change, how that impacts the bay versus the lake versus an inlet versus the middle of the lake. So, I pull my brother aside, my brother-in-law. I'm like, hey, what's this? What's this about 5 foot swells? What's going on here? Is this going to be like this tomorrow morning? And we had predicted that the direction of the wind, 1, would change, and 2, would not be severe in terms of wind gusts. So we had predicted a relatively smooth swim, especially where the swim was located right off of Jackson Street Pier. Wake up Sunday morning, the exact opposite. And I'll backtrack to like my race logistics, I guess. But Sunday morning, wake up, whatever. I get to transition area and they canceled the swim before transition even opened. So I parked my car like a psycho at like 4:30 and just I wanted a good parking spot, and then just kind of waited for transition to open at 5. I didn't have my phone on me. I put it in my bag. I get out of my car at 4:45, 4:50. So I didn't get the notification because I didn't have my phone out in my hand. I'm walking up to the transition and, I heard within a half a second that the swim was canceled from someone else who had their phone out. They canceled the swim at roughly like 4:50 or 4:50 something before transition even opened, which I guess was really helpful for people to not have to worry about bringing swim gear the whole way to transition. But again, I had a good parking spot, so it didn't matter to me. But so swim is canceled. It's a weird feeling right off the bat because let me backtrack. When I got to transition, I heard the swim was canceled. I didn't bother looking at the water because it didn't matter. I had to get ready and transition, whatever. Once I'm ready, I took a look out, an hour later or whatever. It was awful. My brother and I were dead wrong. The water was awful. There were white caps everywhere, right by the pier, right on the swim course. Buoys you can definitely tell between 2 and 5 foot swells, the buoys are bobbing. The wind was awful. The gusts were upwards of 30 to 35 miles per hour race morning. So you got to get over that quickly because Ironman made the right call with canceling Ohio's swim. They made the right call for athlete safety. I don't even the swim just would have been awful. It would have been awful. And last year was awful. So not that last year should have been canceled. I don't think it should have. I think last year was the product of poor preparation and scheduling based on some barges that were in and out of that pier. Unfortunately, nothing that Ironman probably could have planned for. I imagine they're not changing those schedules for the race anyways. This year it made sense to cancel the swim, so they made a good decision, and you have to get over it quickly as an athlete, as a coach. You got to help other athletes, etc. Kind of deal with the mental change that comes with 1/3 of your disciplines being completely kicked off the board. So weird feeling, but got to get over it. Now, for me, myself, as an athlete, I put a lot of time into my swim. Sure, over the entire season, I guess, like leading into Eagleman and Ohio. It paid off at Eagleman, where I averaged like a 151, 152 per 100 in open water, which is good for me. And I think, I'm not looking right this second, but I think I even remember mentioning that it was close. It might have been my second best open water swim ever in a race. So I needed that after last year's Ohio swim, where I felt very uncomfortable. I had a really bad experience in the water, and I ended up barely making the swim cut, like the first time ever. So back to the drawing board, right? In your off season, you put a lot of work into your weakness. That's what I did, and I felt great coming into this season. I think that showed at Eagleman, and I was ready to avenge, the bad swim that I had in 2025. Show up and swim's canceled. It kind of messes with you a little bit because after Eagleman, I probably swam in open water like 4 to 5 days per week for the last 5 weeks. So I put some serious time into open water. I never once swam with my wetsuit. I always swam just in jammers in open water just to get even more comfortable, and have no buoyancy. So I'm as prepared as I possibly can be for Ohio's swim, which I was ready to avenge and ready to kind of get that bad taste out of my mouth. Long way of saying I didn't put as much time into my bike and run over the last 5 weeks because I wanted to focus on my swim. And I was also rehabbing my calf injury. So I was running when I could run, but I wouldn't say I was training my run because I was focusing so much on my swim, and I wasn't really executing tempo runs. I wasn't doing any speed work, nothing. I literally was just going and running at most for 70 minutes over the last 5 weeks. That's the most I got, 70 minutes. And I'll get to the run later, but I'm just kind of painting the picture now of the last 5 weeks were predominantly swim training. My bike fitness was very solid, so I just maintained my bike fitness over the last 5 weeks. And I think that paid off, and I'll get to that. But, I mean, I was bummed. Okay, I definitely was bummed because I felt like I had one of my best swims in me. Again, you can kind of see that, the tail of the tape there from my Eagleman performance, like that I had put a lot of time into my swim, and then I put even more time into my swim leading into Ohio. So I definitely was ready to showcase it, and for no one else but myself, I was ready to have a swim that I was proud of. So again, you got to get over it quickly because I had never experienced this before. Of course, the time trial bike start, but that's where we're at. Okay, and the time trial bike start. I'm done talking about the swim. It's over. There's nothing else to really discuss. You have to move on and kind of get the weird feeling of, one of the disciplines being gone. You have to get over that quickly, and I probably got over it quicker than it even took me to just explain the first 10 minutes of this race day experience. So to be honest, I'm explaining more of it now than I even cared to think about on race morning, purely for purposes of just giving you a picture of how the day was going. But yeah, I did. I got over it pretty quick, and then you kind of have to frame your mind around how to start your bike leg. And honestly, what am I capable of on the bike now, because I'm not carrying the swim fatigue into the bike, which again, as triathletes, we're fairly comfortable. We don't train triathlons in training, but we train the biathlon. We train lots of brick sessions with bikes and runoffs. So something that we're all very comfortable with, just a weird approach to a race setting without carrying that swim fatigue. And you're not as snotty, you're not wet, you don't have to deal with transition 1 at all. So your bike's all set up, you have all your nutrition and everything in your kit already. So it's just a different approach. You only have one transition to deal with, and it's T2. On to the bike leg, I guess. Quick sip from the coffee. Black coffee, by the way. So little promotion there. Drink your coffee black. Don't waste your calories on the Kramer. So the bike is a time trial start. They started 3 cyclists every 5 seconds. So very similar to the 3 people every 3 seconds, or maybe it's 5 seconds on the swim start. I don't even remember, honestly. I think it's 3. But the same exact countdown. The beep, 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 go, kind of a countdown. Every 5 seconds, 3 athletes cross the start line. attempted to clip into their pedals and flop all over the place. It got a little crazy in terms of how efficient the start was, just because, and here's why. They started you in numerical order. So if you were the first person to check in, you were the first person to start at 7 a.m. And that kind of, I think, was presented some complications, because not that the swim. Well, let me just dive into this. All right, the swim start, you seed yourself based on your pacing. If you're a fast swimmer, that does not mean necessarily that your bike and run are similar to your ability in the swim, but it kind of does. It doesn't directly translate. There are exceptions to this, of course, but if you're seating yourself at the front of a swim, there's a thought that, okay, this is a higher performing athlete in terms of the entire race. Again, that's not the case across the board. So you take the swim out. Now all of a sudden, you're just biking next to people who checked in relative to your time. Not who are, like, you're not coming out of the water with relatively similar experienced and similarly fit athletes. You're just biking next to people who checked in with you. That means you could be cycling at the start next to somebody who is a 4 hour and 30 minute 70.3 athlete, or somebody who is a 8 hour and 30 minute 70.3 athlete. And you could be the 630 athlete, right? So you have the experienced elite age group athlete next to you who's starting at the same exact time, and you also have the brand new athlete who's never attempted a triathlon before, right? Starting next to you, at the exact same time. So that was complicated in the sense of, you have people who don't know how to clip into their bikes. You have people flopping around off to the side, and the next person and second person behind them are already past them within 5 seconds because they're still not into their pedals. So it got a little hectic, but I will say it did not get nearly as hectic as I anticipated. By the time I got to my start, it actually was relatively smooth. The hectic part was getting out of the city for five-ish to 10-ish miles, because you have those inexperienced athletes who don't know how to approach, like, hard turns within the city as you're trying to get out of the city. So that was annoying to deal with. I wasn't able to, like, ride as comfortably for the first, honestly, maybe 15 miles. Because of that reason. Like, there's a lot of turns to get out of the city until you have like a 10 to 12 mile straight. And until that point, you're kind of on edge with how people are approaching turns intelligently and safely. So that was frustrating, but at the same time, getting out of the city is much faster than I remember. And what I mean by that is the wind was at our back. Getting out of the city. So we were flying, which of course made things a little bit more complicated when there were sharp turns. But thankfully I fell back on some of, my race experience, and I was fine, and I executed normally, and I was very aware of where people were around me. And to be quite honest, if somebody's accelerating into a 90-degree turn, I could tell that they didn't have enough experience to be doing that. So I just stayed the heck away from them. And that was completely fine with me. So getting out of the city, first 5 to maybe 12-ish miles, sure, there were some complications with dealing with other athletes and just being mindful of that. But the wind was at our backs, and I was flying a lot faster than I expected and than I remembered. So that was good. I think after the first 20 miles, I was averaging like 23.5 miles per hour. Mind you, I'm a 200-pound athlete, so I'm flying. I think my watt output, I was somewhere around like 210, 215 for the first 20 to 25 miles. Very pleased, because I've ridden this course a million times, and I know that at around mile 35 to 37, if you have some energy, you can gain a lot of speed because there's a slight downhill, and typically that's the fastest part of the bike course for roughly 8 miles. Like you can go from like 37 to almost 45 and just fly on that bike course, maybe even 37 to 47. Like it's fast. There's a slight downgrade. Typically at that part of the bike course, you have a tailwind, and you can just kind of fly on that area of the bike course. So in my head, I'm thinking, wow, 25 miles in, I'm averaging over 23 miles an hour, which is a huge PR so far if I can hold it. And I'm thinking I can hold it because I know what's coming. And I, like, in terms of my energy expenditure, again, I didn't have the swim. I wasn't carrying swim fatigue into the bike. So in my head, I'm thinking I absolutely have to PR this bike course, and rely on maybe the temperature of the day not being crazy like Eagleman, to have a solid run. So I'm thinking in my head, this is going to be a great bike split. I'm already on a PR pace for my bike, and I'm not even at the fastest part of this bike course, right, from my experience on the course. I get to like 32, 33, and I get to 35, 36, where it's time to pick it up. And you just can't pick it up. There's nothing to do about it. There's a massive headwind on this part of the course, to the point where I'm not even dropping my power output. If anything, I started working a little bit harder to see if I could pull it together, because see if the wind would change. So I'm holding like 220, 225 watts for like a couple miles of this faster portion. And I'm going like 18 miles an hour. I can tell that the headwind is just destroying my pace. And I was like, it is not worth the added energy right now. So I pulled back to around like 200 or even 190 watts or so. And I just settled in, and I just accepted that it was going to be slower for those 10 miles. And it turns out it wasn't actually 10 miles. It was the rest of the bike course. So the first 30 miles, relatively quick. The 23 miles an hour plus felt great. All of a sudden, the last 20 to 25 miles, maybe with the exception of coming back into the city for 3 miles, all headwind, literally all headwind. And I'll be honest, the headwind was not horrible. I've ridden out there before where it's almost unbearable with the wind. It wasn't nearly that bad, but it was bad enough in a race setting that you had to be mindful of slowing things down and having an intelligent approach so that you could save some energy for the run, as opposed to, all right, I'm at mile 40, it's time to lay it down, which is what I was planning, because that's typically the part of the course where you can lay it down. I remember riding the course in that section and literally averaging 30 to 31 miles per hour on a flat or a slight downgrade, because it is that fast. The road is that smooth. You have a tailwind and there's a slight downgrade. Not the case at all on race day, which was fine, but led to a slightly different approach once I got there, which was fine. Whatever. Long story short, whatever. I did end up PRing my bike. The bike was 57 miles, not 56. I already mentioned that in a previous episode. So PRing my bike time overall, I did not, because it was 1 extra mile. But PRing my bike speed overall, I did. It was just under 22 miles per hour average speed. My normalized power output was like 205. And I actually didn't cross-reference that with other power outputs, but I did PR my 90K, which is right at the 56-mile mark in the race, so I would assume that is a bike PR for me lifetime. It came in roughly like 237, 238 bike split. I think the 56-mile bike at Eagleman was 244. So this was 57 miles, and I was 237, 238. And, I would assume that would mean, 234-ish, 233 if it were a 56-mile course. So again, in terms of time, I don't know if it was a 100% PR, but in terms of overall pace and speed, it was. So come off the bike, having a bike PR, without the swim fatigue, honestly, I am not surprised. I kind of expected to have a really strong bike, again, with my familiarity with the course, not having to swim, and I did. So everything was as planned, to be honest. I did not have a time plan for this race at all. I think I had a very healthy mental approach to this after the swim was canceled. I wasn't out to redo the math and recalculate, because everything is different when you're taking out arguably 40 to 50 minutes if you want to include transition time plus the fatigue. So I was not in my head about recalculating where I should be and like how much fatigue I typically carry. I was just in my head. I was just like, I need to PR the bike split. I'm not fatigued getting into this. I have to have a good bike split. I did. And then I basically was just saying to myself, I have Run Fitness now, and the day is like a high of 77 degrees and sunny. It is like perfect conditions to have a good run as well. So you better have a good run is basically all I'm telling myself. I'm not like, oh, what's my pace going to be after I PR my bike split? Listen, that's not what I was thinking at all. I just told you, the max I ran in between Eagleman and Ohio was 70 minutes. So it's not like I was like able to predict how fast I could run off of the bike after a bike PR. I didn't have that level of fitness on the run coming into this race, but I did have Run Fitness. I've increased my frequency per week. After the calf injury, I was able to train. I was able to hold, 10-minute miles in training. Again, I pushed no speed. I purely just raced for volume, I purely just trained my run for volume just to try to accumulate consistency. Thankfully, I did. So I felt more confident with the run. But again, what pace? I had no idea. Because I was not training pace over the last 5 weeks. I was just training consistency, which I had none of leading into Eagleman. I had no consistency because I was injured. I didn't run for a month before Eagleman. So I come into the Ohio block having not run the week after Eagleman, and then just increasing my frequency weekly just so I could get consistent. It proved to be very effective. Okay, I'll spoil it first. It was my second best run ever in a 70.3. This was my 10th 70.3. Mind you, I'm 200 pounds now, and I had my second best run ever within a 70.3. I ran a 2:01 half marathon at Ohio. And to be honest, I felt good the entire time. Metabolically speaking, I felt good the entire time. Now, muscularly and musculoskeletal, not the best, because I did run in some new shoes, which I know I'm contradicting myself saying that you shouldn't do that. But I did, and I needed something. I felt like my run fitness had improved, and obviously I know that consistency is key, so it did improve, frankly. I knew that it did. But I also, at the same time, I needed like a little burst of confidence, or even just the placebo effect or something. So I got a new pair of shoes. I walked around in them. I jogged in them once for maybe like 5 minutes, and that was it. And I needed it to be like I needed it to be something that would distract my mind. So I start the run and I'm like, okay, these actually feel really good. And then I'm thinking about it to myself. I'm like, how am I still running this fast right now? Maybe my shoes are really helping me out. Even something that small, I think, can go a really long way in terms of your mental approach to the race. Again, even if it's just a placebo effect and it's not the shoe, it's the athlete, right? All this stuff. I'm 200 pounds. A super shoe is not going to do much for me. Like, I know that in my head. I know it in my head. And I'm not going to reveal the type of shoe. You can ask me if you want, but I'm not like broadcasting or promoting a specific shoe, because I'm not in that business. And I think there's so much individual variability with shoes that I'm not even going to share it, because I don't want somebody to go out and say, oh, that's the shoe that I have to race in now, whatever. But ask me if you want. I'll be happy to tell you, but I'm just not promoting it. But I got this shoe, and I didn't even look at my watch for until I hit a mile split. So my watch vibrates at every mile. So I told myself, I'm not concerned with my pace at all. I'm running off RPE. When I feel the mile split, I'll look at my watch to see what my pace is and if I'm holding it. But I'm not concerned with it. I'm just going to run off RPE this whole thing. Because again, listen, I didn't train tempo. I didn't train speed. I had no idea what I would be able to hold. So I went off a feel. And listen, that comes with experience. Not everybody can just go run a half marathon off a feel, especially after a PR bike split. But I did, and I was comfortable doing it. I looked down at my watch after mile 1. My watch vibrates. I'm hoping in my head and in my heart, based on my run fitness, that it starts with a 9, right? I'm running 10-minute miles, 10:30s, 11-minute miles just to get consistency in training. So in my head, I'm like, I would love to be running in the 9s right now. I look down at my watch. It's not a 9. It's not a 9. I look down at this watch, and it's not an 8. This first mile was a 7:58 mile. A 7:58 mile. And I say to myself real quick, you're an idiot. What are you doing? I say to myself. Okay? It's the angel on the right and the devil on the left kind of a deal with the shoulder situation here. You're an idiot. What are you doing? And at the same time, I'm also hearing this voice that says, hey, you're running off RPE right now. If that's how good you feel, that's how good you feel. So if I'm holding a 7 out of 10 RPE, eventually it's going to shift to an 8. That's how it happens in races. If I'm holding a 7 out of 10 RPE and that's where I'm at, I'm going to keep it there for right now. Let's see how this goes. Now listen, I was not looking at my pace, so I'm not saying to myself, and I have half a brain, right? I'm not saying to myself, oh, I'm holding 7s all day. I'm not stupid. I'm just saying to myself, go off of RPE, see where the next mile takes you. Just go off of RPE, knowing in your head you have 12 more miles. Second mile, I ran like an 8:08, something like that. So I'm thinking to myself, again, 2 voices. I'm thinking, 1, you're an idiot. What are you doing? Please slow down. And the other voice is saying, well, we're still at a 7 out of 10 RPE. Let's just keep running off RPE. I'll check in at the next mile. Next mile, 8:12. So I'm running low 8s right now. I'm running low 8s with single-digit mileage left. I'm under 10 miles left, and I'm running low 8s. So I'm ecstatic. And listen, I'm not a first-timer, okay? I'm also not an elite runner, but I'm not a first-timer. If you have enough experience, you can tell pretty early in this run if you're going to have a good run, all right? I knew I was going to have a good run after I saw the third mile at 8:12. And my plan did not change whatsoever. I'm running off RPEs. I'm going to keep checking in at every mile on my watch and to see how it's going. That's it. That's all I was planning to do. So I'm running off RPEs, 7 out of 10, keep holding it. Low 8s, low 8s, low 8s, maybe a mid 8, maybe another low 8, maybe a high 8, maybe a mid 8. I'm literally running mid 8s average at like mile 8 or 9. I'm holding like an 8:40 average, something like that, and feeling fine. I do my typical routine of an endurance event, a 70.3. You get to the aid station, you take a quick walk, make sure you get what you need, and you fall back into the jog as quickly as you can. Now, what I will say is, up until mile 9 or 10, I barely walked at all. I would walk a couple steps to make sure I got what I wanted, and then I fell right back into a jog, literally a couple steps of a walk, but I still did adhere to my policy of walking the aid station to get what you need. So I did that at every aid station. Now, eventually, the walk gets a little bit longer if you get more tired. So you're walking the aid station instead of maybe for 5 seconds. Maybe it turns into 30 seconds or so, and that's fine, and I'm a proponent of that. So I implemented my own practice, my own recommendation, and as I got more tired, now listen, you're going to get tired. You're going to get tired. So I walked a little bit more of the aid station at mile 9, 10, 11, and 12 when I got to those aid stations, which again, no issue with. I ended up averaging like a 9:10 or something. Like an awesome run for not having run under like a 10-minute mile in prep for the last 5 weeks. I ran like a 9:10 average. Again, with basically averaging low to mid eights the whole time. The only thing that changed was I extended my walk for the aid stations because these shoes being brand new, it led to not an injury at all. That's not what I'm saying. I'm not injured. I'm completely fine. But led to some musculoskeletal discomfort in one of my ankles, my left ankle. So if you overpronate a little bit too much, a super shoe is not going to be great for you unless you're running incredibly fast. And of course, I know these things, right? And I started noticing some discomfort in my left ankle around like mile 8. So I'm like, crap, I got 5 more miles of this. What's this ankle going to do? You know, I overpronate slightly. So I'm thinking to myself, like, I really hope that that this is not something that's going to lead to something permanent. And it didn't, right? I feel fine now, but it led to some issues. So I spent some more time like working it out at the aid station for the last 5 aid stations. So yes, my average per mile dropped because I walked a little bit longer at the aid stations for that reason. But like I said, metabolically speaking, I was holding those mid eights all day long and it felt awesome. It felt like I was finally racing the end of the 70.3. And again, no swim fatigue, bike PR, and minimal like tempo training. So I was just like shocked with myself that I was able to hold the mid to maybe moderately high, not high, but mid eights the whole day, with the exception of walking and just extending the walk of the aid stations a little bit. So I was ecstatic. I think I came across at exactly 4 hours and 43 minutes. Again, I expected a good swim. I think there's potential I could have PR'd my entire 70.3 that day. It's you can't say that. How can you say that though? You know, I mean, it's impossible to say that. So, I had the thoughts in my head like, oh, maybe I could have PR'd my 70.3. And that's why I mention it to you. And I know that other people have felt similar things after finishing a 70.3 with the swim being canceled. But I was just thrilled that I had 2 great legs and, a PR bike split, a second best overall half marathon in a 70.3 race. I was just ecstatic. And I felt like an athlete, which is a good feeling. You want to feel like you're finishing strong, and, praise God, I needed something like that to feel good at the end of the season, and that's what happened, and I'm ecstatic that it happened. So that's where I'm at. That's where that's where the 70.3 took me, the finish, and I could not be happier, to be honest. I will also say this, and I don't have the math in front of me, but I gauge these performances off of percentile finishes, not time finishes. And again, this race was the same for everybody. It was the same for everybody. I know that you know that. If you know that the swim is canceled, well, guess what? That swim is canceled for every single athlete, okay? Not only me, it's canceled for everybody. So everyone has the time trial bike start, and everyone has a half marathon after a 56-mile bike. And that's all that anyone has. And this race is the first time ever that I finished in the top 25 percentile overall, and the top 25 percentile or top 30 percentile in my age group and gender. So, and that's also with saying, from my perspective, that my swim fitness is probably maybe not the best it's ever been, but arguably the best it's ever been. So this was a great race for me, and it would have been a great race for me had I done the swim as well, and that excites me. I'm very happy with how things went, and this was the best overall finish in terms of percentile relative to the field. This is the best overall finish of my life. And I know I'm not where I want to be in terms of fitness, but I'm also not a pro, okay? I'm a dad. I have 4 kids. I train in the dark. This is just fun for me, All right. And I know I say that all the time, but I can't stress that enough. I'm not a pro. If any, I'm like the farthest thing from a pro. Like, if you see how I live my life, like, it's family all the time. I got, with the 4 kids, one of them's tiny. The food that they're eating, the scraps of their food that I'm eating. So I'm not throwing food away. Like, I don't have a perfect anything. I don't have a perfect diet. I don't have a perfect training regimen. I don't have a perfect training schedule. I don't train at the best time of day, based on my body and what I prefer. I just make it all work. And for me to cross that finish line and then look back and see that I was in the best percentile finish of my life, like, kind of just blows my mind, because I'm not where I want to be. And I'm going to continue to try to get better and faster within the constraints and the lifestyle that I have, which, I'll be honest, is the best. I know I just said how it's imperfect, and it is, but I love my family. I love the way that the way that I'm able to do this. I love the sport itself, and I'm ecstatic that I get to be a part of it, and I'm ecstatic that I get to continue racing as much as I do. So, looking for a parking spot here. So I'm thrilled. I'm thrilled with how things went, and I couldn't be happier. And one thing I'll also mention is that I'm done now for the season, which I'm also very excited about. Typically I try to race Akron Marathon in late September. I have decided not to, and I am just calling it in this year. I'm going to take a couple months and do whatever the heck I want, and then I will fall back into some structure for 2027. But I am not in a hurry. I'm happy with my race season. I'll do a race season recap eventually, because I know it's only July, but I'm done, and I'm happy to be done, and I'm excited about it. I have the rest of summer to be excited about it, and it's going to be a different off season where I'm not training for something in September right now. So I'm excited about that, and hopefully be able to focus a little bit more on 2027 goals a little bit earlier, and just have a healthier approach to that off season and those goals. So I am very, very excited. I'm thrilled with how the season ended. I will be back to Ohio. I still need to avenge that swim. You know that about me, and I'm excited to do that. I will be back in 2027. At the very least, I will be back to Ohio in 2027. That is 100% certain. I can tell you that. So again, great finish to the year. I'm thrilled with how things went at Ohio. I'm super pumped about this off season, which is starting sooner than later. And I appreciate all of the support, the follows, the shout outs, all of that. So thank you so much for listening. Again, I hope from this you get a small nugget of maybe what might work for you, how you could approach something differently to achieve a goal of yours, or achieve a high percentile finish, or achieve a time finish, or a time goal that you have. So that's the whole point of me doing these episodes. The previews, the recaps, the small nuggets here and there. I really and genuinely hope that it helps you in some capacity. So thanks for listening. Again, as a reminder, follow, like, subscribe, share all that stuff on the socials at Hill Pursuit. If you want to reach out to me directly, hillpursuit@gmail.com. Check out the website for coaching, nutrition, all that other stuff, hillpursuit.com. And don't forget, we have a YouTube as well, and you can listen to this episode again, all the other episodes, wherever you stream your podcasts, Spotify, Podbean, Google, Apple, all that stuff. Thanks for being here. That's all I have. I will see you next time. Until then, have a very blessed day.